Okay, now this is a little bit an out of the ordinary video, and the reason why I'm doing that is so I'm tutoring on Wyzen and have a lot of students of different levels, and there's one thing that I basically always kind of, well, I'm surprised about is basically if I see people operate their IDE in a way that the program doesn't help them to develop fast. So I'm going to jump into two IDEs. In this video, we're going to do PHPStorm, which is, I'm not going to lie, I think the most superior IDE you can use for web development. And the other one will be VS Code, obviously, for its popularity reasons. And so we're going to look at a couple of things and like how to best use your IDE. So again, this is the PHPStorm version, and the intent is that will get you to a point where you really make better use of your IDE and maybe save yourself a lot of time over the course of the day. So what we see here is the project, right? So I cannot emphasize this enough. A lot of people, work with single files and they pull it into their editor and use whatever external Explorer features in order to do that. Create a new project and tell your IDE everything about that project that's necessary. We will jump into what that means, but I mean, the easiest thing is always create a blank project, and I would highly recommend putting that into your local host. So directly, and you can see, like, I'm on Linux. For me, that's var www html and then the project name. On Windows, that might be whatever, C, XAMPP, htdocs, or whatever. Find out where that is, create your projects directly there so you don't have any kind of requirements to run any kind of server somewhere. And that is basically what we have when it comes to navigating the file structure. And as you can see, it understands this as well. So here, this is the project name, component, blog view. This is right where I'm in here right now, right? So if I basically say, okay, I'm going to have the PHP controller to it, do you see how it changes? This is basically, and I can navigate here up there as well, right? So, and I can always do that, so I don't necessarily need to have this kind of visual representation if I kind of know my file system and where to find things. And that's basically what we're going to do now here. So if you have a longer, this is actually relatively short. Let's see, well, we need to scroll at least somewhat, right? If you have a little bit of a more complicated structure that you find, you have this little structure thing here. That would basically perfectly tell you, okay, those are the different functions, right? So here we have our private properties here, and then we already jump into the methods. See that? I can navigate like this pretty easily. And then the next thing you want to take advantage of is, instead of opening up everything, and I see that I try to get used to that. Don't, like, to get from here to here, you will have a couple of things open, and you can freely arrange them in the real estate that you have. Right, so of course I can, maybe do stuff like this and say, yeah, I want to work on this simultaneously, and get the best out of this. And so since we're talking about navigation, so how do you jump to something with a couple of commands that I basically want to do? So with Control F, right, I basically open the in-file search. So I can basically now do add head, and with F3, just like everywhere else. Well, I mean, there's only one occurrence of this. So let's do maybe content. And I can basically jump around with F3 to all the different instances. And if I'm not specific enough, then I can basically change on the fly what I'm searching. And if you do that with, so that is Control F. If you do that with Control F, with Control Shift F, then I basically can search across the whole scope, and I can define what that means. Do you want to search in project, in a particular module, in a particular directory? Do you want to maybe apply a file mask? Do you want this to be a regular expression? Is this case sensitive or not? There's a lot of stuff you can really go into detail with how you search across certain across certain files and so on. And that's basically what you want to do. Now, the double shift is a different way of navigation. That's something that actually is so prominent that I use it all the time. So you just hit shift twice, and I can basically start typing and navigate to a particular file now. So, for example, if I want to find this blog controller, I can basically see I start typing the blog, and it already kind of like, okay, so those are the files that match it. Those are the classes that match it, and here we basically have files that are not directly associated. So it's also relatively smart. So when I do BC, it finds blog style CSS. So it understands that you might want to go for an abbreviation of things, right? So the reason why, by the way, we don't have this more prominent, this would normally be the first hit, but it's even smart enough to understand, well, this is what you have already opened, so it's probably not what you're looking for. You're probably looking for a different file here. So that is extremely helpful, and I highly recommend looking into that and using that to get somewhere really fast, because I mean, I've seen people like lose a lot of time in trying to like locate where they are, and that really helps. So the next thing that you want to spend time with, and I cannot emphasize this enough, is in the settings. You want to take care of what kind of language properties you want this to work with. So I'm actually in the editor. Let's actually go up to languages and frameworks. So as you can see here, we're basically using a couple of so we need PHP, CSS, and HTML to worry about. So if I go to my PHP, and a lot of those things are automatically maintained, so don't worry if you find something here that you can't explain right now. That normally is because some kind of path and or composer or whatever put that there for you. So as you can see right here, it says no interpreter. This is something that I want to basically fix and say, no, I'm actually going to use the interpreter that PHPStorm has on file, and this is basically something that normally auto detects, and the reason for that is that we have in that case we have a PHP executable installed on this machine, and it understands that, okay, this is basically what you want to use. Now the reason why I cannot change this here for now, this has a lot to do with how smart the IDE is. So what it says, like, okay, so you might be running PHP 7.4, but I'm gonna basically return my evaluation and show you errors and so on based on being compatible with PHP 7.0. And the reason for that is very simple. Is it understands that there's a composer JSON, and apparently we need to be compatible with 7.0, right? So this is perfectly aligned with what we expected. Oh, and I should have probably saved that. Okay. Okay. The next thing that I want to, let's open this up. So there's actually a lot of more things that I can do here. So this depends a little bit on what is installed here, but the test framework. So I have, for example, here there's no test framework running, but I can install PHP unit either locally or there's actually so much to do that I'm not really sure what I want to jump into. But giving it the path to see here, the composer's understood. Most of this, by the way, happens completely automatically. But here you can basically see, okay, we don't have a composer executable, and I said there should be a composer executable, right? So this is maybe something you want to fix. And but more importantly for us now, let's quickly look into JavaScript and see what we have here. So this is how the language works on, okay, what version are we running here? You see you can set that to various different types, and that can be pretty useful. Configure code completion settings is something that you should also basically look into. There's a lot of stuff that you can basically do. Most importantly, though, on a very high level, you want to enable it to understand. Here, do you see Node.js and npm encoding assistance? This is something you want to check if you're working on a file that runs on the backend, right? So it understands that you know, there's a process and certain variables available and require and that kind of stuff that otherwise it would not understand, because it needs to know, well, is this a JS that runs on the browser, or is this a JS that runs in the backend? So that's something you want to check here on languages. And then a lot of the stuff that you see has something to do, like Rust is because I installed a plugin and so on. So you won't probably see this. But that's basically what I wanted to say here. Now, when it comes to code style, and please forgive me, but that's also something that I always see is you find stuff where you say like, okay, so here's something here, right? And this is how your code looks like, right? And then it's really hard to understand what is going on here. I mean, you know those spaghetti code that you keep producing when you keep working. So one of the things that I really like is if I press Control-Alt-L, it's gonna auto format the file that I'm on based on particular language settings. So in this case, it applied my settings. And if you look back into settings and go into editor and then into code style, you will notice that you can choose a language here too, right? So let's in that case go to HTML and basically go here, and there's so much you can basically say, okay, what are the indents, and then okay, here for, you know, what are the here you can do specific code generation. That's something we're going to look into in a second. And there's so much you can basically set, right? And actually in the more complex languages, it's really a lot that you can change here. Every single thing here, you know, is that a new line or not? You know, where do certain code styles rely, and so on and so on and so on. How do doc blocks behave, and there's even way more. And you can naturally also import that or set that from a particular standard. So PSR12 is probably something that I want to do when it comes to PHP. So that's something that I already did. And same goes for, you know, JavaScript is also like the shortcut. Okay, what do you want to follow? And that completely saves you from the necessity of any kind of linter. So that's something that, you know, you might, you know, consider as a really huge time saving. Now, if you are working in a team and you share a particular code style, you can basically import and export the settings that you've done here, and that will help you a lot when it comes to you know, some new line characters in Git and little spacing issues and so on that are different, that doesn't pollute your commit logic. Okay, so we basically have that done. So actually, let's stay in here. And so the next thing that you want to look at here is something that is really impressive, and those are live templates. Okay, so live templates enable you to generate particular behavior out of the box, right? So I can basically look at something like for-i, right? And it would basically say the iterable expression as value. Do you see that? So what does that mean? And you can create own live templates. There's a lot of, depending on what kind of stuff you've installed, a lot of stuff already there. And this is basically how auto-completion works when you ever find, you know, like something that generates particular output. So for example, actually let's create one in HTML so we see what's going on. So there's not too much here that we have here. Let's basically create a new live template, and we're gonna call this test, okay? And so it's in the context of all of HTML, can be in a comment or whatever. Let's be lazy. And we're going to say tag name. And then we're going to say my attribute. Oops. And then we're gonna basically going to end up here, right? And it's going to be here. And then here's my tag name. Okay. And here is I don't know, target. Let's do this very simple. Okay, so we're format to code style, so it's always behaving less. So what have we done here? So of course, as you can see, I can edit the variables now, and can create particular expressions for it. So I'm not going to get too much into that right now, because we just want to see how that behaves in general, right? So interesting is here. Okay, what have we done here? We created something that the abbreviation for it is test. Right, and we also basically say you expand it with tab, which is the default behavior. So that said, let's apply this for a second. If I were to write test and then click tab, then you can see, okay, now basically we're jumping to the point of variables, right? So I can basically now say my element, right? I hit enter, jump to the next point, and say, I don't know, URL. I hit enter and jump to the end, right? And it can say now, okay, this is the content. Okay, and this is how under the hood everything is already created for you, right? So most of the elements already work like this. That is why the puck style of writing works. So if I say, okay, h1 dot class hashtag ID and then hit tab, it's going to generate it like this, right? So it's really simple to work with that. And sorry, but before I forget, I really want to get rid of this. Okay. So this is something that you can basically utilize to adapt to. You use a particular framework, and if you can't find a plugin for it, you simply create a couple of specific behaviors, and everything works just fine for you. This is super powerful. I mean, it takes you a while to basically use a couple of things you need, but I mean, for debugging alone, there's so much I do with live templates. And so now we're basically already in code. So let's basically see what we do here. So what I see a lot is people using context menus, right? So stuff like that, and say like, oh, okay, I want to copy this, and like work like this. And this is basically, so if you code, there's one thing that honestly is kind of like almost a no-go. Actually, it is a no-go. Okay, and it's like copy and pasting is something that you simply have to do with your keyboard. So you have to understand that okay, learning keyboard shortcuts is a little bit of time you need to invest, but the amount of time you use to your mouse, I mean, ideally you never leave your keyboard, and this will help you. It's important for your health. Okay, it'll basically save you from carpal tunnel. It will increase your productivity. There's really so much you can do. So if I really want to move this H1, for example, there are so many ways to do that. So what I can do in PHPStorm, for example, I can click Control Shift and then start moving around with the arrow buttons up and down. See that? I can move that. So sometimes I want to have a little bit of a code block. So I'm going to keep pressing Shift. Actually, I'm going to press Control and then W, and it marks basically the next logical separator. I do the same thing again. It starts to mark the whole thing. I do the same thing again, and it marks basically everything that's in between here. Now I do Control Shift, and I can now move the whole thing outside. Do you see that? This is what's happening. Right? I mean, it's a weird selection that I took. I can have selections. So again, this is the Control W would select the most logical thing. No, I want it to do both classes. Just hit the Control W again. It behaves logically. Of course, what I can also do is to simply press Shift and basically start making my selection here. You know, I'm just using the arrow functions here. That's all I'm doing. Right? And have my particular selections. That makes so much sense to basically use that capability. So if I want to cut something out, then needless to say, I will not, start using the context menu. I will basically say, okay, so this image is wrong, right? Let's basically mark this, Control C for copy, move where I want to go, and then Control V. And it will automatically also take care of the spacing, so it will, as you can see, it just jumped here, right? Because, okay, this is where it belongs in the hierarchy. Okay, Control Z basically removes it again. So Control C and Control V, so copy and paste, absolute must. I really can't emphasize this enough. Next thing you want to do is if you want to basically duplicate a certain kind of behavior. So let's say those columns here, right, that we marked here, I want to duplicate that. So what I'm going to do is, let's mark one and I do Control D, and as you can see, it duplicates it. And so this time it didn't really understand how it's supposed to place. So I can again do my Control Alt L, and it places it correctly. Right now, only applied to the selection in this case. So those are the things you really want to do. Duplicate selections is also something like, actually, let me get rid of this quickly. So let's say I want to change a couple of things, right? So what I can do is let's for example say I want to select this and this. So I'm holding Alt, and now I have two selections, right? And I can influence them simultaneously, right? And for example say class name, right? I can do this, so now I have selections. I can have two cursors also with Alt, right? And say like, no, I actually want to add to both of those, and say class 2, right? That's simply with the Alt key. So play around with that. It makes a lot of sense. It makes a lot of sense. And last but not least, I might want to have some particular changes, because now I notice that, oh, I had a typo. Whenever I wrote card content, it's actually wrong. And so I can do Control R and say, okay, so whenever you find card content, please do card body, and it would basically replace that accordingly. I will not execute that now. Now, the next thing that you want to take care of, and this is probably the last one for this short video, is that your IDE understands what files are loaded, right? Do you see what I'm using here? So this, for example, uses Bulma, and Bulma is something that I keep as an external library. Oh no, I didn't even. No, I have it, and actually I'm just using it in Node modules. It's a library root. This is how I marked this. Do you see how you can mark something as library root? That will happen automatically for you, but you can actually do that. Mark directory as. Do you see that? So if that's the case, then certain things are understood. So for example, if I say here, this will basically say, okay, those are all the different things that hit now. So code completion will be so much better. We'll not do that either now. So code completion is a huge impact also with PHP. Like, I need to understand what's happening here, right? So when I'm doing something like this, I want to have the immediate understanding of, okay, what's the context here? What can I basically select, right? All of that kind of stuff. So I think what I'm trying to say is because I mean there would be so much more when it comes to connecting a database directly, so you don't need kind of like an external workbench. Do you want to get your Git in? So I don't use too much of commands here, right? Because so much is automated for me. Maybe let's do 2 examples of that. So this is how my Git branches work. Right, so if I make any kind of changes, so right now I'm on the feature blog, that's a branch, so I hit Control K, and so here basically, oh, there are actually changes. That's interesting. Okay, that's something I need to look into after this video. So that's basically what I probably want to do, right? And then I can basically just with Control Shift K, I can basically push those changes to the branch, and this actually works even with submodule branches and you know, all kinds of things. So that's everything about that you do in your version controls logic, where you can basically say, okay, you know, set it up and so on. So I don't really use any kind of Git commands, and I sometimes actually have to look up even the most basic Git commands because I use them so seldomly. And so my update is here, this Control T, as you can see. That's all I'm doing to update the current branch. Now that said, having the terminal here is very, very useful and powerful. There's so many things I can execute from here, right, or run a particular node things and so on. But if I have something that is highly standardized, I have 2 other things that I use before I use the terminal. So whenever there's something that's repetitive, I can basically generate run configurations, right? And that or build configurations, and that would, for example, do a couple of things that would normally be achieved with you know, a watcher or whatever. So let's make an example. In my frame, I probably have a SCSS file. Now it doesn't even show me that it rendered CSS in the CSS map, because we're not interested in that. This is what we work with. Now if you look closely down here, as soon as I make any kind of change, do you see that? Executing CSS task. So this has re-rendered now. And this has a lot to do with, it's going to ask you that the first time it finds a file like that, and it's called a file watcher. Oh, wherever that is, file watchers down here. And as you can see, this one is active, and we can look into that and see what that actually means. So this executes SAS, and basically this is the arguments, and most of this just works out of the box for you, right? If that's what you want here, but sometimes that's not what you want, right? You want to influence the scope and say, no, I have some kind of index, and that's what I want to have rendered, and then collect, you know, like some kind of sublets somewhere, and the output is in some public folder or whatever. So that depends, but the basic principle is pretty straightforward. You basically have and actually, why is this even typo in Word navbar? Oh, Jesus. Okay. You probably want to have this you know, taken care of, so you don't have to do this whenever you make a change to a CSS file or anything that you know, needs pre-compilation. You don't want to have to go into your terminal and run this and so on. Now, if that is not something that you can automate, what you also want to do is you can add a configuration and basically generate all kinds of different, you know, like you can run particular tests, you can, you know, run, build, I mean, you really name it, unit tests and so on. All of that simply based on, you know, like those kind of configurations, and then you can basically run them with Shift F10 or with this little button here. So that's something that you also want to look into to automate that. And then of course the terminal itself will facilitate anything that you do just once, right? So let's say, okay, you want to install, I don't know, a particular, you require something from Composer and so on. But even if you don't do that, even if you, for example, alternatively say, I'm going to make changes to the Composer, So you can see right here, it says this configuration file contains a list of composer dependencies. Now, I'm not sure why something doesn't seem to be updated here, but I basically have the possibility to basically say, okay, I can run install update and show log directly from here. It will ask me to do so if anything is different than what I have in my, well, it's composer, so in that case in my vendor folder. So those are all the things that the same, by the way, goes for if I go into the project and create, you know, like, do you have a package JSON here? Yeah. Let's look into this. Well, here apparently that's not requiring anything. Dependencies, no, it does, but it seems to be up to date. So if that would also ask me if that wouldn't be my node module, so it would probably say, hey, do you want to run npm install and so on. So if you make changes here, you can also trigger them directly. So I guess there would be so much more to say, but I want to be a little bit conscious of you know, like the stuff that you can grasp. I guess my main point is take advantage of the power of your IDE. I cannot emphasize this enough. Understanding what tools I'm working with saves me about, I would say, at least an hour a day, just time-wise and productivity-wise, and that is a lot of time. If you a lot of frustration, especially if you're learning. By the way, I know that there's always something more important to do than, you know, getting to know your IDE, but especially if you're learning. So much of your frustration accounts for not using the tools correctly, and then, oh, I'm trying this out, and then now you're running this external service here, and you need to you know, reopen the terminal, and every little thing needs to be done so often, just because you're trying out, you know, whether or not that's the right kind of markup, and that's the stuff that will drive you insane. That's what's frustrating. If it was easy, if honestly you simply write and it basically evaluates what you're doing, you know, with a click of a button, then it wouldn't be so frustrating to learn. So take that into account, please. Every hour you spent with your IDE is an hour well spent, and this is true whether or not you're a complete beginner or whether or not you've been doing this for 5-6 years. It really doesn't matter. So thank you so much for watching. I know this is a very peculiar video, but nonetheless, I find it important enough that I bother you with it. So you enjoy your weekend.